Hello and welcome to episode 34 of the Rhody Rumble podcast. My name is Adam Bernstein. Today I'm joined by Dominique Turner. Dominique is a graduate of the University of Rhode Island and is currently serving as a multimedia journalist for ABC6 in Providence. How are you today?
I am great, Adam. I'm great. Long day of work, but we're good.
Yep. And how was your Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving was good. I went home to New Jersey, where my family is, for like literally 24 hours. Worked Black Friday, the morning shift, so live in front of Warwick Mall. So it was a quick turnaround. Left right after dinner on Thanksgiving, but it was still good to see my family and to be around my people. So it was good. How was yours?
It was good. Thank you for asking. Yeah, I live in Long Island, New York, so it was quite the
Okay.
drive. It's not too far from Jersey, but quite
Yeah,
the
yeah.
drive
I
from
feel
Rhode
like
Island. So
Yeah, URI is like Long Island, New Jersey University. Like it's
exactly.
all tri-state area peeps. So love it.
Yep. Yep. And my dad went to URI also, so that's part of the reason why I ended up here.
Nice.
We'll get more into the Harrington School, which is another reason why I chose URI. But, a question that we always like to start with on this podcast is really just, what is your why or what motivates you?
What motivates me is definitely making a difference, feeling like at the end of the day, I accomplished something. Maybe I even helped someone along the way or spread an important message, put some awareness on something. I feel like, working in media, you kind of have a certain responsibility to share accurate information, helpful information. And whenever you can help someone in doing that, that's what makes it all worth it to me at the end of my day. So that's definitely my why.
Absolutely. And you mentioned you're from New Jersey, and I just alluded to it before, Harrington School and just all the perks of the University of Rhode Island. But I'm really just curious about when it came down to committing to college, how did you settle on the University of Rhode Island?
Yeah, so originally I was looking at New Jersey schools, Philly schools, because it's pretty close to home. And I thought even Connecticut was too far. I was like, no way. And a track coach that I had in high school ran track at URI, played football at URI, and really was kind of pushing me like, just apply, go look at it. So I did that to kind of shut him up a little bit, applied, got in, and I was committed to another school, had a roommate there and everything. And my mom was like, no, you at least have to go see URI. You can't, get accepted and not go visit. So I was like,
Right.
oh, okay, I'll go visit, kicking and screaming. And I went, and immediately from the time I stepped on campus, I was like, okay, this is my place. Like, this is exactly what I pictured when I thought of what I wanted my college experience to be. Just obviously the cosmetic stuff. The campus is beautiful. Everyone there was smiling, and I felt very welcomed. But when I really learned about the cool opportunities from studying abroad to, the opportunities in the Harrington School, I knew that it was a place I could thrive and really kind of grow into myself, which is exactly what I feel like I did. So I felt like it was a successful experience at URI, and yeah.
For sure. Um, I'm gonna just go in order of college and then to where you are now.
Perfect.
Um, and correct me if I'm wrong. When you got to URI, sports media wasn't a major just yet.
Nope, it was not a major. So
Okay.
I did communications because I knew I could talk, but if you put an equation in front of me or uh, the periodic table of elements, couldn't do it. But I
Yep.
knew I could talk. So I knew communications was my vibe. And within communications, there's so many options, whether journalism, PR, like I just felt like no matter what direction I went in, there was a place for me. And I
Yeah.
could really kind of hone in on what I was interested in.
For sure. Your story about just coming to URI and touring is very similar. I know I just mentioned that my dad went here. So, of course, there's the scholarship, the alumni scholarship. But, um,
Absolutely.
I think just like touring the university and being from New York, it was a little bit of a culture shock. And just seeing, what the Harrington School had to offer. I just remember doing like a shadow day and shadowing one of the students currently at URI. I don't know if he or she is now here anymore, but um, and it's crazy to think this was 3 or 4 years ago, as now I'm a junior. But
Right.
I had to sit down with former dean Adam Roth, and he pretty much just sold me on everything that the school had to offer. And I believe my freshman year back in 2019 was the very first year that sports media became a major. So it's just crazy to see how far the program has moved along, and what some of the alumni like yourself have done post graduation.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. It's awesome.
Yeah. And I noticed from your LinkedIn, and you just alluded to it before, that you studied abroad,
Yeah.
in Italy, if that's
Yep.
correct.
So I studied abroad in Italy I want to say going into my junior year, which was something like completely out of my comfort zone. But I don't know what got into me. I think my mom was kind of, pushing me in that, not pushing me, but, kind of opening up the doors, being like, this is going to be a cool experience. You'll never be able to do this in your life, really. Like, you're a college kid, go to a foreign country. It's an experience. So I went, studied abroad for about a month in Naples, Italy, which was super cool. And um, it wasn't really communications focused. It was more agriculture and culture in general, but I really was able to like immerse myself in that culture. Naples is very authentic. Like every time we were in a group, my classmates and stuff, there's only 8 or 10 of us. Whenever we heard someone else speaking English that we weren't around, we were like, who are you? Like, who is that?
Yeah.
What are you doing here? So it was very authentic. And I would love to go back one day, but it was just another opportunity presented by URI, which I was able to take advantage of. And I think about it every day.
Absolutely. I feel like those are the opportunities you just have to take advantage of.
100%.
Unfortunately, most of my collegiate, time here at college has just been taken up by COVID. So
I
I don't
know.
really know if that's in the books for me.
Right.
Um,
Well, at least you were able to focus on different things, things
yeah, absolutely.
here on campus and kind of better yourself in that respect. So still very unique.
I did think about studying abroad. I had an idea to go to England and work with one of the football, or I guess
Uh-huh.
soccer clubs
Yeah.
there. Um, I thought that would be kind of cool and it would go along with my major, but again, I guess it just wasn't in the works. And also now that things are kind of getting better, um, I would maybe have the opportunity to do it, but I kind of feel like I can't miss out on basketball season. It's just I can't
Yeah.
go abroad if I'm playing
Priorities.
basketball. Yeah, I mean, I'm currently serving as the FM sports director for WRIU, so
Oh, nice. Good
getting
for
the
you.
opportunity to do a lot of those games. But if you could just talk about like some of the connections you developed abroad, at least before moving on to more of the media side of things that you did at URI, and just really things that you took away from your experience abroad.
Yeah. So I feel like going abroad really put me in an uncomfortable situation. You're going to a foreign country, you're traveling from the airports, you're walking down the streets trying not to get hit by Vespas and Italian people on mopeds. So it was an absolute culture shock, but it really kind of forced me to like sink or swim. You know what I mean? And everyone swims. Like with URI, I had such a nice professor, Rosaria Pisa. I think she does women's studies and gender studies, I want to say. But she was a super cool resource, someone that on the trip, if you're feeling a little nervous, she would calm you down in a second. She was fluent in Italian. She was born and raised in Naples. And that's someone that, after the whole trip, we were able to meet with her at Pasquale's and, see her on campus. So it was kind of like having a cultural experience, but then when you got back to URI, nothing changed. I still follow my classmates on social media and stay up to date with them. And it's just like we went through an experience that not many people get to go to, and we did it together. So I made a ton of connections with other students and my professors and stuff while I was there. I still see even the Italians that we met in Italy, like I'm still friends with them on Facebook and, keeping track and staying in touch. So it was cool. It was a whole different world. But I feel very lucky that I was able to experience that.
Absolutely. I actually had the opportunity to go to Italy. I think it was like after senior year of obviously high school graduation. So it was definitely an exciting opportunity. So it's
Yeah.
beautiful over there.
Yeah.
But I mean, talking about opportunities, I just noticed that you held a couple of internships with the media relations department for URI Athletics. So working with Shane Donaldson, Thor Bjorn.
Oh yeah. My
Um, you
goat.
know, yeah, of course. Definitely coming in clutch with credentials as well.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
big time. But what is the biggest thing that you've learned from those internships? And also, if you could just talk about like the importance of internships,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
for
My
people that want to
internship,
follow a similar path like yourself.
yeah, absolutely. I feel like my kind of timeline of how I did things was a little bit off the beaten track. You know what I mean? Like to be honest, didn't take advantage of a lot of the opportunities URI had when I was a freshman, sophomore. I'm still trying to figure out my classes, being away from home. It was a lot. But come my junior year, I knew I needed an internship. And at the time, I was working with Campus Rec. So I was with this woman, Jill Blaney, who is one of the administrators for Campus Recreation. And she became like my best friend. I would work with her every day. And I was telling her about, I need to find an internship. And she's asking me the things I'm interested in. And she was like, why don't you go upstairs and just knock on sports info? Shane and Jody up there, they're so nice. And I was like, I don't know the next thing about sports information, but I guess I'll go knock. And I'm just kind of that person that, I might not, back then I wasn't, going to internship fairs and being super proactive. But something like that, I was like, okay, I could knock on a door and just kind of pick someone's brain a little bit. So I literally got off work, Campus Rec, went upstairs in Mackle, knocked on the sports information door, and literally was just like, are you guys hiring interns? Like, what's the deal? So they were like, all right, come sit down. Like, let's talk. So I was able to sit with Shane and Jody literally that day. And they kind of explained to me, the things they do in their office that I didn't even know about, and the things that they're looking for in an intern. And yeah, it was that immediate kind of connection, when you're face to face instead of an email introduction. So it was good. We were face to face just talking. And I told them I'm interested in helping however I can. I wanted an internship that I felt like I could grow from. And I was genuinely interested. I didn't want to dread going to my internship. And I never did. So it was a super cool opportunity. So I started interning with sports info my junior year into my senior year. So doing things like, handing out stat sheets for basketball games, or even PAing softball, or just organizing rosters or organizing bios and doing kind of like the back end of things, stats at games and things like that. But like I said, I never felt like I was going to work. I never dreaded my internship. Like a lot of times I would rather go to my internship than go home and be bored and hang out. It was so much fun. And I grew up around sports. So it was definitely something that came natural to me. And I built a ton of connections from that. So
I was going to ask, did you always know that you wanted to pursue sports and just media in general?
I would say so. Definitely more in college. I feel like I kind of grew up not really knowing what I wanted to do and not really knowing what route I wanted to go in. So when, I started learning more about sports info, I was like, I could see myself working in sports forever, like
Right.
this was really my home, and I met my people, and I'm doing it at a school that I love, and, nothing is better than that. So
Absolutely. Have to agree with that.
yeah,
You went to URI at, I feel like, a really good time to cover athletics. It was the Dan Hurley era.
yeah.
And the NCAA tournaments on the basketball side, the men's basketball side of things. Just success of athletics in general, I feel like we're really good those couple of years. What would you say was probably the most memorable moment as a student, as a journalist, and, even through the internships and everything that you've done, the hard work that you've accomplished? What would you say is probably the most memorable moment that sticks with you from URI?
I think one of the most memorable moments, through my internship, I was able to volunteer. This was my senior year. I was able to volunteer at the A10 tournament down in Brooklyn at the Barclays Center. And URI made it pretty far. I remember we were playing VCU, and I'm in my A10 apparel. I'm a volunteer, so like I can't really cheer or whatever.
Right.
Somehow I finessed my way from working in the ticket office where there's no TVs, you're away from the court. I finessed my way to work courtside, just kind of responsible for watching the media, making sure no one, goes onto the court and everyone stays where they should stay. And of course, it was a game against URI and VCU, and it went into, I want to say it went into overtime or even double overtime. And I remember just the feeling there and seeing just a sea of Keene blue. And even compared to VCU, and they drove up in buses, like fan buses, like they came in hot. But just looking over at the URI side and seeing people travel from Rhody and Connecticut and all these different places to the Barclays Center, it was amazing. I still get goosebumps talking about it. And I remember having to sit on my hands and like be responsible and try to not cheer, even though inside I was screaming. But that was really cool to see, the basketball team that I loved and cared about playing on a stage like the Barclays Center. It was super cool. And I wouldn't have had that experience if I wasn't interning and if I wasn't, passionate about it. So it was really cool. And we all kind of got hotels together and went out after the games. And it was cool to see, players, coaches, media outside of what we do every day and kind of just in Brooklyn. It was very
Yeah,
cool. And I got really close to the other students, my coworkers, and the other media outlets today that I work very closely with. And some of them I literally work with at ABC6. So it's kind of just, triggered that interest, triggered those relationships, and definitely one of my most memorable times.
for sure. I feel like a lot of people just don't realize the work that goes into a sports information director. I mean, I
Mhm.
definitely could say, like, before coming to URI, I probably didn't even know what a sports information director was, and now I'm dealing with them like almost all the time in order to get credentials and going to press conferences, stuff like that. So
Yeah.
just the experiences that you had going to the Barclays Center, me being from Long Island, I would always, again, my dad being an alumni, I would always go and to either Fordham and watch them play when they were away, or going to Brooklyn to watch them play. So I definitely can relate there. Something that I'm really curious about more so with the job hiring process out of college or following graduation, um, did you really know that you wanted to work in news, more specifically TV? Because, I feel like I'm always seeing people go off and graduate, and especially the ones that decide that they do want to work in TV, they end up working in different states, and it's tough to kind of work your way back to the East Coast. However, you got very lucky pretty much staying locally and working for ABC6. So really, what was that hiring process like for you?
Yeah. So a little background, because I honestly didn't really grow up watching the news. I was never, I never saw a news reporter on TV and was like, that's it. That's what I want to be. It kind of just, I want to say fell into my lap, but not really, because there was a lot of hard work that went in behind it. But essentially, when I was at URI, I graduated, and Shane, Sports Information, they hired me back for a year. This was 2019 into 2020. So got to campus in August, and I was helping out with whatever they needed help with. But like you said, there's so much work that goes into being a sports information director. Like, I just felt like I couldn't even ask Shane to help me or teach me how to do things, because it was almost more work for him than
Right.
it was to just do it himself. So I felt like, I'm helping out where I can, of course, but now I'm graduated. Now I want more responsibility. I'm not an intern anymore. I was a assistant. So I wanted to help a lot, and I didn't want to, put that all on Shane to teach me everything. There's a lot that goes into it. So I kind of came up with my own idea that I would do, a feature segment. So I knew I liked working with cameras. I didn't necessarily know if I wanted to go on camera or what the deal was. But I kind of just shot the idea out to Shane. He was like, yeah, 100%. So he let me be creative, and I developed this segment that would run on URI's social media, and it was similar to this. I was interviewing a different athlete every week, either someone with an interesting story, interesting upbringing, or someone who performed well that week before, and I would just literally reach out to them, Instagram, email, whatever it is, and kind of shoot them the idea. So I started sitting down with athletes, bringing my own gear from the Harrington School I'd rented out, and kind of set up a little interview, get cool pictures and videos from them, and make it a feature. And it would run every Friday. So Feature Fridays. And that's when I really was like, okay, I like being on camera. I feel pretty natural, and it's fun. You get a little adrenaline rush. But it's so fun. I was like addicted to it. So I started doing those Feature Friday segments, and then the pandemic hit. So I didn't really have a job because, we weren't going in to work, and there was no sports. So it was really tough. Once my lease was up in Narragansett, I moved home to Jersey, and, I have the best family, and they took me in with open arms and really kind of gave me time. We're in a pandemic, so they
Right.
weren't pushing me to get out of the house. They weren't pushing me to apply for jobs, but I'm a worker, and I need to be working. I need to be doing something. I can't just sit at home. So the hiring process for me is really, I would go on LinkedIn all the time. I would set up, job alerts from places in New Jersey, places in Rhode Island, and I was kind of willing to go anywhere. But I just didn't really know what exactly to do. Like, I reached out to every sports information director in the country. I was like, are you guys hiring? Here's my reel, here's my resume, whether it was kind of more on like the marketing side or SID side. I was really reaching out and got the same response from everybody. We're not hiring, we're, actually firing people and laying people off, no sports. So it was really tough. And then on LinkedIn, I saw ABC6 in Providence was hiring. And I knew nothing about the Providence news market. I knew nothing about news. I had never been in a newsroom before. And I applied through LinkedIn. They got back to me. We had a call with the news director. A few days later, a second call, and it ended up with them offering me the position. So it was definitely trial and error. I didn't end up where I necessarily envisioned myself, but overall the process was worth it 100%. So
Absolutely. Just to go off a couple of things that you just said, like when you talk about getting that adrenaline rush, I definitely can relate to that. Especially when I do a broadcast
yeah,
after going like to a press conference, anything like that. I have, a big briefcase that I have to literally lug all the way back from the Ryan Center to,
yeah.
I should bring it back to, the WRIU studio, but sometimes games end late and I just have to bring it back home.
It's a
But
grind.
I feel like just walking out of a press conference or walking out of a game, especially after a win, I mean, it's always just you get that adrenaline rush. And I often find myself just saying, like, I talk to myself on my way back to like planes, like, wow, that was just so cool. But really, I'm, as a junior now trying to figure out with, me graduating not this spring, but next spring, what it is I really want to do. I know I want to work in sports and I know I want to work in media, but whether that's broadcasting and commentating games, I'm starting to kind of explore sports information a little bit more. Obviously, I like to podcast and I love to talk. So that's something that's kind of in my realm. And actually, my freshman year, which was the year you were just talking about, 2019, 2020, that's kind of like when I had a lot of time to really think about what I wanted to do. I never really got those opportunities to commentate games. I had a couple of chances my freshman year. Obviously, last year, there were no fans in the arena, so I didn't have any chance. I had two, I think, broadcasts. That was it. And now
Right.
I'm doing majority of the games. But this podcast is something, Zoom didn't even exist like at the start of my college,
So true.
college career. So I had to kind of think on my feet, and I've been doing this now for over a year and a half. So it's kind of a struggle because now I'm kind of trying to apply to those internships. And that's why I ask for both
Right.
next fall when I'm a senior and also the summer. And I'm trying to work in, New York, which is one of the big capitals of the media industry. So, but really,
Yeah.
I can't control that because the pandemic has changed everything. But I guess that just transitions into my next question, working in the pandemic, what are some of the challenges that you didn't realize you would ever have to face in your career that you did end up facing? And then going off of that, what is a big lesson that you learned through all of this?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, you're doing exactly what you should be doing. I wish I was doing this my junior year, and I have no doubt that you'll get to New York. Like, this is so cool, and it's something you should be very proud of yourself.
Thank you.
Obviously, Zoom is a huge struggle. You feel it, I feel it, but at least it's given us an opportunity to kind of meet with people, whether it be face to face or not. It's been given us the opportunity to do so, with a screen. So I feel like utilizing tools like that have really been, major in this whole pandemic. But it has been difficult. I mean, I feel like we've all had to adapt to this, and we've all had to kind of figure it out, and I think it's making us very innovative and very creative, where even though you're not face to face, there's still an outlet to get your story across and to do your job. So it's definitely been a struggle. I mean, working in the pandemic in news, like starting in news in the middle of a pandemic was a
Yeah.
wild time. A lot of times more so when I was behind the desk, not now, but last year, reporters had to wear masks on air. So it was hard to even figure out what they were talking about. They're out in downtown Providence, but they're wearing a mask, so you can't really see what they're saying. So all around, it was just difficult, and the whole interview aspect with social distancing and being safe and dealing with people every day was dangerous, and it was crazy. But I think it really, really built an innovative society, and I hope it just continues. Even though it's not ideal, we make the most of it, and still get the product and still do your job, and just with a little bit more creativity.
Yeah, I mean, it's affected almost every industry, not just media and
Yeah.
sports. I mean, there was a time when like live sports just didn't even happen. And again, that was kind of like the
Oh,
rise of podcasts. And that was when people just
yeah,
wanted to talk, but they couldn't leave their homes. So, I also found that it was kind of struggling or I struggled with it because really I had one normal semester and that was my first semester of college. And then spring
yeah,
semester got cut short. All of last year, my sophomore year, was pretty much COVID. This semester is a little bit more normal, but there's still the masks inside the classroom, so it's still not completely. And there's new variants now and
right.
booster shots. It's never gonna be the same. And I was just gonna say,
Yeah,
like, your entire, I guess, professional career, or at least your job at ABC6, the time that you've had there, it's only been under COVID. So it's just
yeah,
interesting that you kind of always have to learn on your feet. I know that a lot of broadcasters now don't even call the game from the stadium; they do it from their homes. So that's something that's interesting too. That a lot of people are just not even going into work anymore, and that they're doing their jobs essentially from right here from their
very
bedroom. So
bizarre,
it's
very bizarre.
it's crazy to think about. So I mean, you started at the station a little over a year ago. uh I believe first as an assignment editor.
Yep.
And if you don't mind just talking a little bit about what that role entails, and then as I alluded to before, you're now a television news reporter, at least for the last couple months or so. What has that experience been like, both of those roles?
Yeah, so it's been a wild ride. So I started out in August of 2020 as an assignment editor at ABC6. I got there and had never been in a newsroom before. I was so overwhelmed. I didn't even really have a good grasp about what my job really was. But I knew, I'm responsible for writing web articles, for calling, city officials, government officials, police departments, fire departments, and confirming information, like car crash, how many injuries, how did it happen, things like that, more of the back end of what you see on TV. Another one of my responsibilities was helping reporters with their interviews. So let's say a reporter needs to do a story on a restaurant. I would go on Google Maps, type in local restaurants, make a few calls, is there a manager there? Would anyone be available to speak with a reporter on, these rules or this new law going in, and a lot of COVID regulations, things like that. So it was very cool. Definitely stressful. My first 3 months, every time I heard a siren, I was like, oh my God, like, who am I going to have to call? Like, oh my God, you never know what you're walking into when you walk into a newsroom. So it was very crazy. But after probably 3 or 4 months, I started getting the hang of it, and I started, getting that adrenaline rush when I got information before another station, or I was able to do something and show off, my communication skills, and make all these calls worth it. So it definitely laid the groundwork and a good foundation for reporting. So I never saw myself reporting. I would always look at the reporters and the anchors and be like, that is such a cool job, but like, I don't know. And then as I started getting more comfortable, I started, making friends who were reporters, some of my best friends to this day, who kind of took me under their wing. And I was able to ask, like, how can I do this? Like, what route can I go in? And at the time there was an anchor, Alana Cerrone. I was behind the desk and she was our evening anchor. So like the face of ABC6. And she was just a superwoman. Like, I tell her this to her face if she listens to this, but she was a superwoman. Like, she had a little baby. She was pregnant at the time, but she started as an assignment editor. So I kind of looked at her as like ultimate inspiration. Like, she got off the desk. Maybe I could kind of work my way up to potentially being the face of ABC6 one day. It was just kind of motivation. So I would pick her brain, like, hey, how did you do this? Like, what kind of things should I do to kind of practice reporting? I'm not ready yet, but what kind of things should I do? So her and a ton of my friends at ABC6 kind of gave me that motivation, gave me some ideas. And on the weekends, I would literally just take some gear, take a camera, take a tripod and mic, go outside and just like write fake scripts, make fake news and just record myself reporting. So it was cool because I was able to kind of critique what I was saying, how I was saying it, and setting up the gear by myself, because MMJ, you're a multimedia journalist, you're shooting your own stuff, you're recording yourself, you're writing it all. So it kind of gave me a little bit of an opportunity to see what an MMJ does on their average day. And then from there, I started going, I worked weekends. So it was very relaxed, no shows during the afternoon, really. So I was able to kind of go shadow reporters who were also my friends, and kind of learn from them, like truly what a reporter does in a day. And it was so overwhelming and so crazy to me, but I fell in love with it. I was like, we're on a grind. There's a deadline. I really want to do this. So like I said, I was recording myself doing these fake stand-ups, fake news. I was shooting them out to some of my coworkers. John DeLuca, an evening anchor, would go over my video, tell me, take notes when I'm doing well, when I'm not doing well. And I formed a fake reel. So I put all like my good takes into the short little YouTube video and sent it to my boss, who already knew I kind of wanted to do more on-camera stuff, but also like, sports and, so I sent him my news reel and he loved it. He was like, okay, let's do this. We're going to work to fill your position. We'll get you, shadow, we'll get you in there little by little. But like definitely see this in your future. So from there, they hired someone to fill my position. I was shadowing reporters for maybe a month or two and really just kind of learning. And the desk helped me a lot because I had a ton of contacts. I mean, everyone I called, I saved in my phone. So now to this day, I'll have, the police chief from wherever cell phone. So it helps me reporting. I'm at an active scene. I'm able to quickly call the chief who already knows me, who already has that kind of built-in trust, a familiar name, a familiar face. So it plays to my advantage. It's just everyone that I ever dealt with at the assignment desk, because that's your job. You're making contacts. You're dealing with people, asking questions, setting things up. It really played to my advantage. So the assignment desk was rough. It was a super rewarding job, but it really built a good foundation for me as a reporter now. I know the information I have to relay back to the assignment desk. I know how to talk to producers and how to kind of set myself, and time management is huge. So it built a good foundation, and now I'm reporting and full time since the summer, and it's been so much fun. I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. So
Absolutely. Yeah. Two things just off of that. I always like give you guys credit for going back and like listening to your takes and your stand-ups, because I always kind of find that challenging, especially when I do a broadcast for WRIU and I have to dig through the archives. It's
yeah.
always, I feel like, I walk out of there with a lot of adrenaline. Oh, that was really good. And then I'm like, wow, like I sounded better in the headset, but now I don't sound as good. Even with this podcast too, like
Yeah.
it's up on YouTube. Anyone can just click on it and,
And
sometimes
hear
I
your
just
voice and
stumble
you listen
with
to it
my
back.
words. Yeah,
Oh, and
exactly.
it's so cringy hearing your
Right,
own
right.
voice.
So
Yep.
like I give you guys a lot of credit with that. Again, I don't really know if I want to pursue TV more. I've never really had any opportunities. It's really only been with radio. The most on-camera work that I've done is literally this. So yeah, so I mean that's something that I definitely want to explore more, but I haven't had the opportunity to do that just yet. And then the other thing you mentioned about saving contacts, and I think that just goes back to developing connections and networking. I feel like every
Absolutely.
journalist that I've talked to, even some of the URI athletes, I mean, through this podcast, I've gotten a lot of people's phone numbers and emails, stuff like that. So there
Mhm.
are some of the basketball players that are currently on the team. I just have their numbers and
Right.
I'll text them like good game, or, how'd it go? And
Yeah.
stuff like that. But I just find it always kind of cool to develop these connections. That way, like if I ever need to reach out to them again and I need to, produce content or post an episode, I could just text like this journalist or this athlete, this coach, hey, would you
Right.
mind coming on? Or do you have, and sometimes they have other connections. So that's
Exactly.
kind of like where I utilize LinkedIn. I'm trying to get into that more and more. So
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
that's kind of
Connection.
in the shadow. I feel like a lot of people don't really talk about LinkedIn,
Oh my God. I owe LinkedIn my
but I,
job. Literally. I'm a
yeah, I
huge
mean,
LinkedIn fan.
at least out of my friends, I mean, there's not many 20-year-olds in my friend group, at least, that are actively using LinkedIn as much as I am. But I feel like
Yeah.
in order for me to really get the job or the opportunity or even an internship that I'm trying to get, I feel like I have to. So,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
yeah.
It's all about who you know.
Mhm.
And when it comes down to it, I feel like it's human nature. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, okay, you met a really cool person at this place, or whatever it is, and you build that human connection and
Mhm.
like you help each other out. It's
Exactly.
a relationship and it can only help you. You know what I mean? And like you
Yeah.
said, having those people being able to connect you to whoever else. Like I remember this past summer, there was a ton of violence in Providence, and a lot of it happened, outside of nightclubs and nightlife and early in the morning when clubs would end. And I have a connection with someone from Federal Hill. And I'm like, hey, I'm looking to talk to someone in the nightclub industry, and you're the spokesperson for Federal Hill. Like, you must know someone that, could talk to me about, violence outside of nightclubs and, with the pandemic and everything. And he hooked me up with the associate person of the nightclub association in Providence, and just like, it's all about who you know, and you just make more and more connections. And that's really what I find super satisfying. And just as a
Exactly.
person, it's like more friends and more connections.
Yeah.
And it's awesome.
I definitely did a lot of that last year, I feel like, because even though I only commentated, I think I did color commentating for 2 men's basketball games. I was connected to actually Ian Steele at ABC, and I never actually had the chance to meet him in person until I pretty much just went up to, I recognized him, and I pretty much just went up to him after a game, and the stadium was empty, so there was nobody there. So it was pretty much just the 2 of us standing there. So I just went up to him, and then a week later, he actually came on the podcast.
Oh, nice.
And, I've been communicating with them. I'm thinking about applying to ABC next fall for a sports internship.
You
Couple
absolutely
of the
should.
networks in Providence. So
Yeah.
I know you got to do one for the major. So I'm just trying to figure out exactly. I know I want to do it next fall because that's kind of like the prime time to do a lot of sports. There's a lot of
Right.
football, basketball, the end of baseball, hockey.
Right.
So I just need to figure out, exactly where and when. I think
Yeah.
ABC is like July 15th is the deadline, I'm pretty sure. Something like
Okay,
that.
yeah. Well,
So,
ABC6, like Ian Steele and Nick, I knew them from before I even knew what ABC6 was. Like,
yeah,
I just knew them as like the cool media guys who would come to the games, and I always looked forward to
exactly.
seeing them. And then when I was applying to ABC6, they called me back. I reached out to Stone Freeman, who
Yeah,
was my partner. You know what I mean? We were both assistants. So I'm like, Stone, like, Nick and Ian, there was 6, right? And he was like, yeah, there was 6. I was like, yes, okay, awesome. So they're like my 2 backbones at ABC6. Those guys are awesome. And even when I first started, a lot of the, kind of learning curves was around editing. And everyone at 6 was saying, you know what, if you need help editing, you have a question, go to the sports guys, because they do this crunching. They do it on a deadline, and they
yeah,
know all the tricks because they have to. Sports, anything could happen.
right.
So they're like the backbone of ABC6, and they're just 2 great guys and 2 connections that I made at URI that, now they're my coworkers. So it really kind of goes to show like how crazy and how small of a world this really is.
For sure. I just have 2 more questions for you. This question, I'm sure there really is no typical day for you. News is always changing, but if there was, an average day at ABC6, what exactly do you do from start to finish?
Yeah. So an average day, really, we have we work on shifts. So there's a morning crew, there's a dayside crew, there's a nightside crew. Mornings is like 3:30 in the morning to noon. Dayside is 9:30 to 6:30. Nightside is 2:30 to 11:30. Luckily, I'm dayside right now. So my day kind of starts around 9:15. We have an editorial meeting. So reporters will pitch story ideas, things they saw on social media, events that are happening that day, whatever it is. Reporters will pitch stories, things they're interested in doing. The assignment editor will go over what's in the planner. So, if there's any press conferences or things we need to be at, and our producers, our news director, they're all there. So they kind of listen to our pitches and they assign us stories. So once you have your story assigned, you obviously, either wait for the press conference to happen, or you go meet the person for an interview, or before that, you're reaching out, trying to set up an interview. If you're really productive, you could do that the day before, as long as the news director approves it. But most of the day is, working to gather information, working to get your interviews, whether it be someone that you're sitting down with, something happened, or, we call it MOS, man on street, going up to a random person and saying, hey, will you talk to me about this thing? It'll be on camera. And a lot of people are like, oh God, no, I don't want to be on camera. But some people are like, yeah, I would love to. And those kind of tend to be the best, most unique interviews, because they're not ever the most prepared, I guess. They're not, a city official or someone in a suit and tie. They're literally just people, real people. And I always tell everyone that, like, I want to hear from real people. So that kind of portion of the day into the early afternoon will be kind of set on getting interviews. And we have shows at 4, 5, and 6 in the evening. So that's really where like the crunch time comes in. So I always try to have my stories done, all the elements to it, at least by 2 o'clock. This way I could start listening to my sound. So I'll listen to the interview. I will transcribe it. So I'll write out the little time codes of where exactly in the video they said what I wanted to use. I'll transcribe it all, write an article, kind of put the sound bites into the script, not article, and go from there. And then you write it out, get it approved by the producers, and you edit. So you go on Adobe Premiere and you're pulling all your interviews from the day, all of your file footage, everything you shot, and you put it on a timeline. And yeah, you get kind of full creative reign with how you edit your stories, which is pretty cool. And it's definitely something that I learned while at URI, you know, with iMovie even. It's helping me today in my everyday job. And once you make your edits and everything, then you have to worry about how you look. If you're going live, you're like, okay, do I look okay to put myself on television right now? Which sometimes you might not even have time to think about. You just got to go. So for the 4, 5, and 6, sometimes you'll have a photographer with you to kind of set up your shot, which is major and super helpful. But a lot of times you're by yourself, you know, whether it's in the newsroom with all the lights on you, or you're at URI, you know, you have to kind of work to set up the live gear, set up the lights, set up your camera. So that goes on top of, you know, memorizing your script and remembering what you're going to say. So it's definitely a lot, but it really builds character is what I say. It builds a lot of character, and it's fun. So at the end of the day, when 6:30 comes and you've been live 3 times and you got your story done to a T, put up a web article, and do it all again the next day. So it's crazy, but it's fun.
It seems like a long day, but I mean, if you love doing it, then that's what matters, you know?
And like you said, no day is the same. You know, every day is different. So it kind of, you know, splits up the week a little bit. And some days you're not live. Some days it's just, you know, a look live is what we call it, or a straight package, and you're not even on camera, which is always cool. But yeah, it's definitely a lot, but every day is different, and you're moving throughout the day. You're going. So it flies by.
Do you like ever sit down and do anything, or are you always kind of trying to find a story, something like that?
Always working. So even when I'm off, like if I go on social media, I'll see something that kind of gets my attention. I'm like, could that be a news story, or would that person talk? Even just, you know, living in the city I work in, for instance, there were these crazy speed bumps being put in on the east side of Providence where I live. And a lot of people's cars were getting damaged. Like the speed bumps were so high. And I felt it. And I'm in a Jeep Wrangler, so I'm pretty high up.
Yeah.
And it was like the biggest news story ever. You know, people were taking their car to the auto body shops. The auto body shops were all annoyed, like these speed bumps. So it's just little things like that you notice when you live in the state or in the city that really kind of helps you think of creative stories and, you know, put that real life element into it, because I feel like news, the purpose is to relay accurate, credible information. So it's even better and more helpful when you live it, you know? So whenever I'm out and about, whether it's I'm off or I'm working, driving here and there to stories, I'm always thinking of, you know, different stories or different ideas that could help the next person and that could relate to a lot of people. So
Right. This is probably more of a question. I just thought of this question. It's probably more of a question for Ian and Nick, but I always find it interesting, just the two of them. And there might be like one night where there's a Bruins game and there's a Red Sox game, and then URI's playing, Brian's playing, you know, how you can't be in 4 to 5 different places at once. How is that? I mean, even on your side of news, do you find that challenging, having to jump around from place to place?
Absolutely. But like most things in news, it builds character. So like Nick and Ian, for instance, they will be on weekends, they will be at 10 different games all over the state, and Massachusetts too. And just, you know, getting footage from each place, getting back on time to go over everything, get the scores, get the stats, and put something together. We honestly have a reporter too, Hector Molina. He is a sports guy too, but he's news, but he used to do sports. So he's able to kind of jump in, help them out whenever they need it. And then when it's internship season, all the interns are out and about different high school games. They're live tweeting. And I think that's a resource that ABC6 really thrives on, is like how good these sports interns are and how confident they are, and like just the workflow that Nick and Ian really kind of like instill in them and they get great product out of. So I think on their end, it really helps them out a lot, being able to have different resources and different people jumping in, because everyone loves sport. So
Yeah.
it's been really cool to kind of see them power through and grind away.
Absolutely. The last question I have for you is just, what is the biggest or just the best advice you can give to students like myself, looking to break into the sports media or even just the media industry and, again, follow a similar path that you took?
The best advice I would say is make yourself uncomfortable. Do something that scares you, because that's how you're going to grow. And that's how you're going to, build that kind of pride inside yourself, that self-pride where it's like, that terrified me and I lost sleep over it last night, but I did it and I did it well and I'm going to do it again. And it really kind of builds that passion that you might not even know you have. So I always say do something that scares you a little bit and you'll be amazed at the outcome. And also ask questions. Ask a ton of questions, especially people you see who you kind of want to follow in their footsteps. Like, you'd be amazed to find out how they got there, the things they kind of did, and take notes from them and ask all the questions you need, because at the end of the day, it's only going to help you, and you're going to build your own network. You're going to build your own self-confidence and self-pride, and be a worker and feel like, you got there and you did it. You weren't banking on anyone else but yourself, and you found your way.
I feel like you kind of have to always have that always busy mentality. Like, again, for instance, me doing this podcast, I mean, I'm now doing it as an assignment for, I'm submitting stuff on Brightspace for an assignment. But really, like, when I started this, it wasn't for any class. Doing articles and writing for stuff like that. It's the stuff that you do outside of the classroom. I feel like
Right.
just kind of always assigning yourself homework and always being busy is kind of just a mentality that, from the people that I've talked to, at least in the industry, that they're always kind of working on something and they're always kind of motivated. So
Exactly.
guys, a
And
lot of
even
credit for that.
yeah, thank you. Even in class, do something that scares you. I was in a sports broadcasting class and we had to make these commercials and be in front of the camera. And at first I was like, oh my God, no way. But then I started like really loving it and really memorizing what I was going to say. And I'd do extra stuff on the side. And that kind of got me interested in, the kind of broadcast media version of it all. And just, I asked a ton of questions. I, picked my professor's brains, later on picked my coworkers' brains. And that's when you start to kind of develop your own timeline of where you want your life to go, where you want your career to go, and what you could do to stay busy, and different ideas you could do on your days off, and different people to reach out to. So that's definitely my advice, my little bit of advice.
Well, I appreciate it. Dominique, thank you so much for joining me and connecting with me. I really appreciate you again taking the time. I really hope
Yeah,
to stay in touch. Best of luck with
absolutely.
everything. Hopefully I can see you at a game or maybe in the studio. I hope to at least visit this
Yeah,
at
come
some
visit, come
point. So,
apply, come
yeah.
shadow. We're always accepting interns, and it's such a good place to start. I mean, they love hiring from within, and when they know they've got a good person and someone that could really help the team, you're stuck with us, and it's a great place to learn. It's a small station, but in a pretty big market, and you could do anything. You could do sports one day, you could do hard news the next. There's a lot of room for growth and opportunity. So hopefully I'll see you at ABC6. We'll definitely connect on LinkedIn, because that's what we're doing. We're staying connected and making
Absolutely.
connections. So absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
Thank you. Best of luck going forward. And of course, go Rhody.
Go Rhody. Have a great rest of your junior year.
Thank you.
Price I want for sure, you gon' need 3 promoters. I got the body from Jim Ellis, but I had switched the motor. I got these badass bitch running around this bitch, they all the coders. I just told her make a story. I just bought all the Trojans.